Alrighty, hello there guys, welcome to the Undersoul Laboratory. Yes, I am wearing a Lima onesie. It's cold, okay? It's comfy. Alrighty, today, gonna go over creating a simple Astro Milky Way edit. Don't exactly know what I'm gonna call the video yet, it's probably not gonna be called that, it's a bit complicated. But, I'm gonna show you guys how to process this, kind of simple way, and we'll see what comes out. So, whack that on into, now I use Camera Raw through Photoshop because I always do a lot of stuff in Photoshop afterwards. Just works a bit easier. Hey, give me back my, excuse me, ignore that, oh god, I'm prepared. No, not previous conversion. Camera Raw defaults, there we go. So that's what we're looking at, raw, straight out of camera. Now, I shot this at ISO 25,600. Yes, I know that's ridiculous, but it works. Reason I do that is when you go really bright and kind of overexpose your Astro photos to a degree, you got to be careful. You get more detail in the shadows and get better colors and stuff in the foreground, that kind of thing. That's how I light all my astrophotography photos. They are naturally lit just with a ridiculously high ISO. Don't necessarily suggest doing this for everybody. It's a whole nother video, whatever, but it worked for me. It worked for this one. There's a lot of those dark shadows down in these bushes and whatnot down here. And I mean, I got a lot more color out of these autumn trees, which is what I was going for. Anyway, moving right along, f3.2, I usually don't shoot at 2.8, I'll go 3.2 or 3.5, just means a little bit less vignetting and a little bit less like chroma and chromatic aberration kind of stuff. Stopping down your lens generally is a good idea. Depends on the trade-off, how much light you want to bring in. If I was really going for the most amount of light I could get in the shadows, I would have done 2.8 at 30 seconds or something. You can, there's many things you can do, many other videos, but for this one, that's what I've got. Single file, keep it easy. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, it is overexposed. I'm going to whack the shadow, sorry, that's the highlights. Highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up, as I usually do, just to see what we've got going on in the file. Holy noisy bedoolies. I've never said that before in my life. That's crazy down there, so we'll darken that down. Now, what I do with my Astro photos, especially if there is a Milky Way core involved, that's like the brightest part of the image. I like to have things nice and bright and well exposed so you can see everything that's going on in the image, generally. That Milky Way core is kind of the important thing that I'm keeping an eye on. I don't want to overexpose that. So what I'm going to do for this one, I might do a brush over the top. I may double process it, paint a Milky Way core in the middle. Let's see how we go. But I'm going to be keeping an eye on that, trying to just, be mindful of my Milky Way core levels. You don't want it to be like white and just overexposed and loss of detail. So I've gone whites up around 30. Usually blacks will go down like 10, 15-ish. It's just kind of keeping that contrast there. I've whacked the shadows all the way up, so I'm just sort of trying to balance that. I might bring them down later on. It definitely looks better down there. So we'll just see how this process goes. Little bit of contrast, somewhere between 20 and 30 is about where I do. Just totally depends on what's in the photo. 27, that'll do. You can do a little bit of dehaze. That can add like a nice little bit of contrast just in those brighter sky areas, so that can look good. Generally don't touch clarity. It can do some nice things. You can paint it in somewhere. I find it kind of like is a bit crunchy and can destroy photos and damage them a little bit, sort of, in terms of how your raw file ends up processing later. I do other stuff later in Photoshop generally. Net Color Effects Pro 4, God, I forgot the name of that, and I've used it for years. That was terrible. We'll go on that in another video again. Anyway, keeping it simple, trying to, and it's becoming not simple, God. Vibrance, I will put up to about 15, saturation 5. Generally, I go really easy on the saturation because it just cranks colors up way too powerful, way too quick. Vibrance is the way to go if you just want to bring some quick color into your photo, but definitely take it easy on those two. Things can look pretty ridiculous pretty quickly. That all looks pretty good. Also, white balance, I think I shot at like 3,800 Kelvin, and for some reason, when you say that in camera and then bring it into Photoshop or Lightroom, it gives you a different number. Don't really know why, but I like the white balance setting that it's at the moment, so we'll stick with that. Going over to the next tab, the tone curve. Got the histogram here. I never actually really touched that. You can do it with the point thing, but down here I love this lights slider, the lights and the darks. They're really awesome, great way to bring more contrast. And when you push these lights They really bring out a lot of nice colors. Obviously, that's way too far, but just so you can see kind of how it affects the sky and this bit of air glow and stuff is a really good adjustment. So generally like 16, 20-ish. Already I have kind of overexposed that Milky Way core there. It's not actually saying I have, but to my eye it's definitely a bit too bright. So I'm probably going to double process, or I might go a brush over that in a bit, but we'll get most of the main adjustments done. So I'll bring those darks down. So now you can see, even though I've got those shadows all the way up, bringing the darks down, bringing the blacks down, that kind of stuff, it kind of balances that back and actually makes it look all right. It's definitely still noisy as hell. We will take care of that, don't worry. Yeah, usually I'll go shadows up a little bit as well. It just kind of brings back those darkest shadows so you're not losing detail in those. And the highlights, will push them up a little touch as well. So as I said, Milky Way core is overexposed. There's two ways of going about it. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring those shadows down a bit, just because that is bugging me a little. Just get it looking kind of nice and realistic. I want to keep enough light on me in there. Yeah, we'll go about 78. That should do. Oh, it's quite dark now. Let's go a little bit more. So what I'm doing is I kind of look at my photos sort of almost out of focus, and I'm just trying to look at the whole thing, and you kind of bring yourself back from the screen, or it can help even if you like zoom out a bit and just look at it really small. Gives you a better feel of the overall way that your eye travels through the image to see what things you've got going on. Obviously this one has a lovely leading line kind of zooming you straight in, and these angles with the trees or the hedges pointing in, and then this Milky Way shooting straight out the middle. It's a satisfying composition for your eye. So it helps to kind of bring yourself back from it and just look at it as a whole, and kind of look away from the screen and look at it quickly and see how it makes you try and tune into how it makes your eye feel, how it makes you feel as you're traveling through it. Because when you sit there editing a photo for an hour or so, you just get lost in details and you sort of lose that perspective. It's a handy little tip you can try doing. So yeah, I'm just sort of, as I'm looking at that, I'm sort of, taking back, kind of making my eyes a little out of focus to get a whole feel of the image to see what's going on. So yeah, I just felt those shadows were still a little too dark, bright, whatever, so I balanced them. So for this Milky Way core, there's a couple of ways of going about it. I could bring it down, that there is about the amount of detail I want out of it, but obviously everything's way too dark and I don't like how that looks. So let's go brush, we'll see how that works. Generally, I don't actually use brushes in Camera Raw. I'll just do a pretty quick overall edit, and then I'll bring it into Photoshop and I'll touch up things in there. And for this one, I may double process it, do a Milky, bring the exposure down, open that in Photoshop, paint it in on top. But for this, we'll see what a brush brings me. So I'm going to bring, exposure down a little bit. Let's go highlights down like 20, and we'll paint that in. Now, that's about the brush size I want. So size of 9. So basically I'm looking for the middle of that brush is, the right size to cover that whole main bright Milky Way core area. And then the feather is just sort of making that more of a gentle, easing into that. Otherwise you're just going to have a harsh straight line, and you're going to tell someone's brushed something over the Milky Way, and that's not what you want. So we'll just do one quick brush down there. So it's made a little bit of a difference, but not much. I'm just going to bring those highlights down a little more. Let's push the exposure 2 clicks. So I don't want to do much more than that. I can start to see where the edge of the brush is making that darker area of the Milky Way a bit too dark. Very subtle. Most people wouldn't pick that up, but I want to be gentle with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. Let's get another brush, and I'm going to bring the size up a fair bit more and chill it out a bit. Let's go 15, and I'm just going to brush this over a way larger area of that Milky Way core. So essentially what that's doing is you're just easing the transition into that adjustment you've made. So then I'm making a bigger area darker just by a little bit, just so it's not going from full bright to then really dark, darker adjustment in the middle. It's sort of bright and then a little bit darker and then a little bit darker again in the middle, just to ease it in. Could maybe do with a little bit more even down in the highlights, but that's starting to look pretty good. I wonder if I'd try and do a small brush adjustment just in there, and let's go real small, something like that, and with the highlights down, -20, let's try that. Yeah, it's just got a little bit more color in there. I'm going to get this a little bit up here as well. that looks a lot better. So now we've retained all those highlight details in the Milky Way. You can, because I'm used to seeing it, I can tell that it's a bit darker around in here, but it doesn't look too bad. I could potentially even, what happens if I push the whites a little more? Yeah, maybe. Let's go in the lights and let's just lift them up a little bit. So that's actually, meant that I can push the whites a little bit more down in here as well, and just kind of keeps it in there. Looks pretty good. Next one we'll go over, this is quite an important tab, the old sharpening and noise reduction. Sharpening Astro photos, risky. You're sharpening noise, it's not great. I find actually doing like 40 or 50 or somewhere around there, just giving it a little bit extra, and then whacking up the masking heaps does help, because then you're just sort of sharpening details, which I'll show you in a sec. I find radius 1.2 is nice, it just sharpens things a little bit larger. I don't know how to explain what it does. Play with it and you can kind of see what it does. Detail will bring that up a bit more. Now the masking I do like 60, 70, 80, something like that. But actually if I zoom in, let's keep it full and I'll show you. If you hold Option while you drag that masking slider, you can see so white is effective. So basically when it's all white, it's sharpening everything, and as you slide that masking slider up, it's just sharpening less and less of everything and only sharpening those kind of nice solid chunky details. So as you can see, it's sharpening all those stars, it's sharpening the edge of the trees and the leaves, sharpening a little bit of the road. It's definitely sharpened around the edge of me and that little selfie in the middle. So it's kind of aspects of the photo we want. So I think I had it at 77. We'll get up there again. So yeah, that actually looks pretty good, and I haven't even done any noise reduction yet. There's definitely noise in there. So we'll jump down to that now. So ISO 25,600, pretty high. I've found doing around 30 to 35 on that luminance slider does a pretty good job. So you can see, if I go back to there, that is way better. I also use Topaz Denoise, extra software afterwards to do a bit of noise reduction, and that sharpens things as well. Looks freaking amazing. Highly recommend that. Again, save that for another video because we'll be here all day. But for straight out of camera raw, that's looking pretty good. If you're unhappy with different aspects of noise in your image as well, you can just get a brush and paint that noise reduction luminance in there if you like. Move along, don't really need to touch these. Lens corrections, always remove chromatic aberration. You can do the profile corrections if you really want. I'm not a fan, especially with Astro, because you got to then deal with the corners and it's a bit too bright, whatever. It's like, I don't mind that kind of wide angle distortion. I think the edges are stretched enough anyway as it is on an ultra wide lens, and doing the lens correction stretches them even more, just a little bit. So it's like, I'll just leave it how it is. But I will go to the manual vignetting and definitely bump that up just to get rid of a bit of that vignetting. And then I'm going to go over to the effects tab and do a bit of a post-crop vignette. Keep trying to say things dyslexically. A crossed pop vignette was what was trying to come out. So I will bring that in just a bit, 17. So I'll bring the midpoint in and then the feather out, and that's just going to make that vignette transition a lot more gentle. It's just giving it more space to go from dark to light. So the idea is you don't actually want people to be able to see that you've just thrown a vignette on there. You want it to be kind of subtle and no one to really notice the adjustments you've done, but the overall image to be quite impactful and be like, wow, that looks amazing. So it's always sort of what you're going for is subtlety. You don't want to just like whack sliders all the way up and say, hey, that looks good. So I reckon it's still a bit much. We'll bring it down just a touch. That rhymed. Didn't mean for that. Wow. Terrible. That's looking pretty good. Let's go shadows just a little bit more to the magenta. Just one click. Really subtle difference, but can help. Definitely got a nice magenta feel going on with the color balance and that red orangey air glow that was there in the sky. It looked pretty awesome. Now that's looking pretty good. A couple of things I'd like to do with this one, which is just brush adjustments basically, is I want to brighten myself up and around that road. So I've got quite a large brush size here. Reset those, and I want, let's go 20 on the exposure. Let's just see what that does. So I'm basically going to click that on myself. I might even just leave that one single click. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's just bringing a bit more of your eye down to me there, creating a bit more contrast between my dark silhouette and the bright road around me. Lock that in, and then the other thing I want to do is I'm going to zoom in on these trees. So the trees are quite dark and we're losing a little bit of the color that's going on in them, so we'll just get a brush. Now this is where you want to be really careful. I'm going to paint in a bit of exposure here, but I really don't want to leak over the edge of the trees into the sky, because then you're going to get a white sort of halo-y glow around the trees. So you're going to be really careful how you go about this. You know, small brush can be the way to go, but also it can be a good approach to just get a really big brush and just do a gentle thing over it, and then it again uses a bigger area to spread that feather around, so it's harder for your eye to pick up. But yeah, that's looking pretty good. Oh, I did go over that tree a little bit, but you can't really see much of a halo. I think I got away with that one. We'll leave it at that. I think I need to go a little bit smaller for this tree. Yeah, just for those top bits. We go small and then bring that back up. Cool. So, you know, it isn't ideal because you're actually brightening up the sky in between all these leaves and stuff. Depends on how like specific you want to get. If it was in Photoshop, I might try and paint some of those bits out with a layer mask, whatever. But that is a quick adjustment. Has done a pretty good job. So there's just a bit more color in those trees. I might do another brush actually. Just the side of this one's quite dark. Same adjustment, cool. I can just paint in there. Yeah, there we go. That's nice. Cool, bit more color out of that guy. That overall looks pretty damn good. Yeah, I think we can leave it there. I mean, you can play with different adjustments for the rest of the day. You know, you can spend heaps of time. You know what? I will do one more actually. This is a really good one I like. Oh god, we're going to be here all day, aren't we? So I have found that the white slider really pushes colors quite nicely in the highlights. If you've got like sunset red tones, or in this case, lovely air glow, pushing that white slider up and painting it in over there can look really nice. So we'll go with quite a big brush, just so we've got that big feather again. Keep it kind of out so you can't see the brush strokes. And you can see these air glow kind of gravity waves, they're called. They're up in here. Lovely colors in the middle. A little bit over here. We're just going to paint those in, so I don't want to go too high up. In the middle there a bit. Let's go over these trees. A bit of whites will help. That, so you can't really tell that I've just brushed across there, but it has added a nice bit of color, just subtly. Even if I bring the highlights down, I'm going to try balance it, highlights down quite a bit, and then bring those whites up. And that should just push a bit of that color in there. Again, I'll usually do this in Photoshop with a layer mask and then paint it in selectively where I want. And then you can also, if you do that, you can use a camera raw filter and you can paint the lights or the whites in, and lots of things, but keep it simple in camera raw. That's a pretty good adjustment. Now, I quite like that. That's not too bad, so I can probably leave it at that. Yeah, I hope that helped, guys. I hope you got something out of that. Yeah, definitely. I might try and release a preset filter on this as well for you guys. Have a wee download for it in the link below, just so you can follow along, or save that as an Astro preset. It can be pretty handy. But yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of a bit of what I'm doing, and a bit of a place to start for processing your Astro photos if you've got a Milky Way in there. I definitely recommend playing with higher ISOs as well. Everyone seems to be scared of noise, but yeah, color is your friend when it comes to astrophotography, and data in the raw file. I don't know what I'm saying. We'll end it there. But yeah, hopefully this helped. Just starting a Patreon, guys. So if you love what I do, please head on over there and help support me. I am a starving artist. Don't make a lot of money. So even if you want to just chuck me like $5-10 a month, there's some pretty cool rewards and stuff on there, behind the scenes content, and it helps keep me alive, and that would be great. But yeah, thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you on the next video. There is lots more to come.